Have you ever wondered why some tomatoes thrive while others struggle, even when they're growing right next to each other? The thing is, most gardeners focus on the wrong things. They spend their time treating the symptoms instead of addressing the cause. If you like a garden with fewer weeds, fewer pests, healthier plants, and less work, you're going to love this class. You'll discover what former New York Times garden writer Leslie Land called the all-purpose answer to everything, why the Amish have relied on it for generations, and how you can use it to create a garden that's easier to care for and a lot more enjoyable to spend time in. A garden that practically takes care of itself. Okay, let's do this. We just got a minute here, so I'll sip my water too. Everybody should drink water out of a canning jar, right? Yeah, beautiful timing. It's almost the first day of summer for the northern hemisphere and the first day of winter for down south for our New Zealand gardeners and Australia. The South Pole too. I actually had a conversation with the chef down at the U.S. station in um, Antarctica, and we were only able to do it because we did a phone call. This is back in the days of phone calls, and um, it skipped off the ionosphere, so it was able to go, and then and we were able to actually have a conversation. Me up north in Alaska and him down south in Antarctica. He was in charge of the um, NASA's growth chamber down in Antarctica, and it was a double-walled growth chamber where they grew vegetables. And it was such a special place because they got fresh produce down in Antarctica. But it was such a popular place that the crew that were down there working for months at a time would ask permission to just enter this growth chamber and just to sit there. Now, in order to enter the growth chamber, they had to go through like two, maybe three, like blocks, like doors, to enter the space because outside it's minus temperatures in Antarctica. But anyway, so they would just go in there and just sit and just smell the green, the chlorophyll. And I guess it was such a reviving kind of experience. And I sort of know that too because I used to be, as you'll hear in a moment, I used to be a merchant marine officer, and we would spend weeks at sea out of sight of land. And when we start heading back to home port, then there was a point, maybe, I don't know, 20 miles offshore or so, where after weeks of just salt air, which is pretty stark, so to speak, to your nose and everything, your senses, to smell green. I don't know how else to explain it. Chlorophyll, lawns, leaves, flowers. I mean, you can smell it. And so we'd be out on deck just smelling it. We couldn't see it, right? Because of the curvature of the earth. But I mean, we'd be crying. Oh, God, it was so good. Okay, all right. Stories. Okay, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Marion Owen, and I am that lady that you saw probably earlier, little gray hair, all that. And welcome to today's class. I'm so excited. So I'm assuming you can hear me okay, right? I just told a couple stories. So, all right. If you have the bandwidth, or maybe even if you're in your pajamas, it's just fine. Turn on your camera. It just makes Zoom more human, I guess. And we all learned about this during COVID, right? So I'm going to turn on the chat, and what I want you to do, if you please, let me just open up this a little bit more, this window, so I can see the chat. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Peter. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Good, 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 good. So I'm going to turn on the chat. Okay. So just for grits and shins, as I call it, just type in there where you're from. Or where do you garden? Where do you garden? Where is your garden? Where do you hang your hoe? And I'll type mine in. The sound is echoing for me. So maybe somebody, if there's a sound that's kind of echoing, then probably turn your go mute, because it might be that you have a cell phone in the same room that you have your iPad or laptop up. So that's probably what's causing it, at least in my experience. So um, Kodiak, Alaska, and we'll learn in a second here where that is. So where are you hailing from? Yep. Yesterday it was uh, Tasmania, Montreal. It was a great gathering of peeps, and I'm sure you guys are there too. So Auburn, Alabama,
Mhm.
I understand I have in-laws there in Huntsville, and they're experiencing a little bit of heat, right? Um, Palmer, all right. Is it Birgit? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. Super. Southern California, more heat. Woo! Gretchen, Kodiak. Hi, Gretchen. You're going to learn more today. Okay, this is super duper. And I want you to know we are going to have a Q&A session at the end. So if you forgot something to ask about gardening, composting in general, um, and just keep in mind that we'll have a chat at the end. So if is anybody okay as far as no echoing? If so, maybe you might have to turn off your volume, whatever. And meanwhile, so show yourself if you can, even if you got your pajamas on. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I'll go back and forth this whole time. And um, so maybe what you can do, Judith, is just turn the volume down a little bit. I don't know why is anybody else experiencing echoing? Okay, everybody else seems to be okay. Maybe somebody in your house or in the room. That's something to think about. Um, oh, you know what? You might have signed in twice. You can sign out and sign back in, Judith. Give it a try. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And like I said, I'm going to go back and forth here. And here we go. Probably have to line things up a little bit. By golly, sure, we will. Where in the heck is Kodiak, Alaska? I like to say we're just a little north of Hawaii. We're smack dab on the ring of fire. Last summer we had a 7.2 or 4 earthquake, so we had a tsunami warning, and we all left our homes if you live in the lower area. So recently I was a guest on the Beat podcast. That's the podcast for epic gardening, if you're familiar with it. A couple cool guys run it. And Jacques asked me during the podcast, he says, "So, Marion, what zone are you in?" And I said, we're in the ozone because the weather's been changing here in Alaska a lot. So maybe it's been changing for you. Give me a yes in the chat if weather has changed for your area, if it's becoming more extreme. And I have found that many people are experiencing a much more extreme weather patterns, and it makes it hard for all of us. So let me turn on that chat again here. Eeks, there we go. Okay. Um, yeah, so it's been kind of like a moving target, let me put it that way. And the other thing is we have El Nino, La Nina, those weather patterns, at least on the West Coast. So I want to share, this is a traditional thing for me, is to share a sneak peek of what's happening in our garden, part of our garden. And we do live on the ocean, which it looks beautiful, which it is, but it also has its challenges. And I'm convinced there is no such thing as a perfect garden or perfect soil. We all have our challenges, just depending on where we live. Um, so all of this you see here is created thanks to compost. Even the lawn is organic. So speaking of compost, for me, I can say that the most profound change is in my gardening is when I actually stop being a short order cook. And what I mean by that is doing like a little sulfur here and a little wood ash over there and hydrogen peroxide here, maybe a bag of this and a bag of that. And I started treating my garden like it was like a living whole organism, not just piecemealed raised beds or containers or something. But unfortunately, present day gardening practices remain mostly reactive, knee jerk, and we often wait until the symptoms become severe enough where it requires intervention rather than just um, more emphasis on prevention. It's like our own health, right? If we eat right, exercise, we're less likely to come down with something. So in the gardening, we don't want in the garden, we don't want to treat the symptoms. We want to treat the cause. And that's why we're here today. So whether you make compost now, you want to learn how to do it, make it better, have a better way to deal with your food scraps. Maybe you're going to get compost from your neighbor. Be sure you make cookies and take them down to your neighbor and say thank you very much. Um, or maybe you just aren't getting the results in your garden that you really hope for. Maybe you're working longer hours than you would prefer, but you still feel like you're on that hamster wheel. Okay, today is your day. We're going to learn how compost affects your garden and essentially your health and the planet's health. So we're going to discover beautiful ways to do that. Now, this is a recent class. By the way, take a look at those white hoops. Here's a kind of a close-up of those white hoops. This is during a class I recently did in our garden. This is all spinach that I started in September. It overwintered, and now it's growing. And many people ask me about these hoops and why I installed them. And they're actually in our garden beds year round now because they they hold up a variety of materials from reinforced plastic to netting to keep out flies that cause root maggots, butterflies that cause other problems, the green larvae that chew up on your cabbage, and keeps other like netting that keeps out birds, cats, rabbits if you have them, squirrels, dogs, maybe even deer. So I want to share this link in the chat. I'm going to do this fairly frequently. So make sure you have your chat on because this is the link to this particular video. And like 15,000 people have watched my videos about hoops. And one of the reasons it's so popular is because as we age, it's important that we keep moving. Motion is lotion. Motion is lotion. So, and besides, yes, the longest lived people aren't in the gym, they're in the garden. Okay, so um, there's that link for you. And what I'm going to do is when I send out the replay, I'm going to include those links probably at the bottom of the email. So just keep your eyes open for that. And then if you want to get an up close and personal look at compost at work in our yard and garden, everything around like the grass, like I said, the hoop house, the greenhouse, these raised beds. I think you'll really enjoy this PBS documentary, and I'm going to put the link to that one also in the chat. So here you go. This is a PBS documentary. Okay. You guys, this is all coming through okay for you? Okay, cool. This is great. Peter, how about you? Okay, you got your chat on? All right, it's on the bottom, that link, just in case. So
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm technically challenged, so I'm not too sure if I can find those links when
if
this
you go on the bottom of your Zoom,
uh-huh.
on the bottom, if you go down to the bottom, it'll say audio, video, participants, chat,
Yeah,
etc. So click on
yeah.
that little voice
Or
bubble
click
that
on chat.
says chat.
Okay.
And it should open up a bar probably off to the right, and you can see a
Right.
conversation. Do
Okay.
you see it?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Great. See, you learned something already. Um, so I co-authored Chicken Soup for the Gardener's Soul. It was a New York Times bestseller. It's in multiple languages. Now, my job as a co-author was to go out and find a quote for each of the 101 stories. My favorite quote, and I think you can probably relate to this, is great opportunities to help others seldom come, but small ones surround us every day. I love that. Small ones surround us every day. Um, okay, I got that. I'm in Waterloo, Ontario. I hope your weather is doing great. And by the way, I'm writing a new book. It's called Cultivating Joy Through Gardening 365 Daily Meditations, like little short stories. And one of the stories I want to share with you, and it's pertinent to why, why we might be here today, is the story of do dandelions have brains? And every week or so, my husband goes out and he mows the lawn. He goes out and mows the lawn. And I have found that there are dandelions that are blooming at soil level, like squashed to the ground. And yet he's running over them with the mower blade, like 3 inches above the dandelions. Now, do the dandelions know to keep out of trouble? What do you think? I think it's pretty interesting when you think about it. Um, and so my thought is they adjust to their environment, to their situation, their circumstances, and they don't grow to their full potential. They're for fear of being lopped off, right? So, how many of us do that when we're faced with something that's challenging or new? You're afraid of being judged, all those things that we don't just go and do it. We don't move forward. So, anyway, I just wanted to share that story. And oh my goodness, it's cold, rainy, and windy in Waterloo, Ontario. Okay, well, that's coming soon for us. So, I feel for you. She. Alrighty. So I'm going to share again. Here we go. And get on with the show here. Okay. Now, you might be thinking, as we get to know each other, I mean, do you really believe it when I say you can have a garden that practically takes care of itself? Abundant garden, fewer weeds, fewer bugs, fewer headaches. Well, a garden that practically takes care of itself. So I want you to enjoy that kind of freedom. I want you to know that. And maybe you're here though because you don't believe it, or you're thinking that this is true for me, but maybe not for you. It's okay. I get it. That's fair. So either way, here's something that's really important for you to realize is that home gardening is not natural. Home gardening is not natural. I mean, a carrot wouldn't normally choose to live next to cabbage, next to blueberries. So that makes us caregivers. We're really caregivers. It's like taking care of a space station or something because plants take up nutrients all season long, especially vegetables. They are the heavy feeders, right? And without your help, your assistance, your caregiving, they could just wither and die, get sick and wither and die, especially if you don't have good soil. But when we don't feed the soil properly, your garden will follow what I call um, a predictable slippery slope. You might not notice the changes at first, but it happens. It's like being in the grocery store for me, and people come up and they say, Marion, I don't know what's going on. I went into my greenhouse and there's just like an explosion of aphids. Well, you know what? Explosions don't happen like now. You need to pay attention, by the way. And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But that's aphids and mold and those silent killers. You know about those soil-borne diseases and pests. So keep this in mind as I share another story. We're going to call it The Tale of Two Tomatoes. So watch and listen carefully because this is a story about the battles that take place that are going on right now in your garden, in my garden, in everybody's garden. Okay? So let's take the tail of two tomatoes and share here. Okay. And by learning and understanding this tale, you will begin to see like a wonderful change that happens in your garden and in your life. This is all connected. But before we do that, I'm going to show you a special one sheet, like a single page document I made especially for this webinar for you. So get ready to take a screenshot and share it with all your gardener friends. And here it is. It's all about if you want to have a vibrant garden, you've got to have healthy soil. And these different bubbles, right, are ways to get healthy soil because that's the secret ingredient. You improve your soil and watch your plants thrive like never before. So take a screenshot or take your phone and take a picture of it, whatever it takes. Because I don't have a link for um, this particular one. Did everybody get that okay? I'll turn on the chat. Gotta remember to do that. Okay, so if you didn't get it, we'll just wait another couple seconds. Okay. Alrighty. The tale of two tomatoes. Now, both tomatoes start out looking pretty healthy. I'd say they're living the good life, right? Their leaves are deep, rich green, and they're loaded with ripening red fruit. But after a while, the second tomato on the right started out that way, as we saw, right? But sometime early in the summer, things didn't look so good. Her leaves are beginning to wilt, maybe turn yellow. She's looking kind of stunted. Now, there's nothing obvious that we can see in the way of worms or aphids. So the next best thing when this happens is to take a look at what's happening in the soil beneath your feet. So we're going to dive underground in the dirt. Okay, here we go. You ready? Put your mask on, whatever it takes. So here's what's on the left. This is what things look like thanks to electron microscopy for the tomato that's healthy on the left. It shows in beautiful, what I call stunning detail, a nematode. This is a bad guy, probably a root knot nematode. If you're not familiar with them, they're tiny. They're tiny microscopic worms, and they can cause extensive damage in tomato plants, many other plants, because they burrow into the roots. But do you see that cord? Here's the nematode. Looks like an eel, right? So here's that cord I'm talking about. Look at that. It's wrapping around that nematode here and here. That is a strand of fungus in the soil. This is a good guy because it's looped tightly around that worm like a lasso. It's strangling the nematode. I told you there was a battle going on down here. So it's strangling the nematode. It is saving, protecting the tomato plant because it's in the soil, that fungus. Now, let's look at the second tomato on the right. This photo shows a similar eel-like microworm, the nematode, except something is different here. Something is wrong, and I mean terribly wrong. The nematode has poked a hole into one of the tomato's roots. It has invaded the plant. There was no fungus strand to protect it, to strangle it. Above ground, the plant started to wilt. You can see there. And it'll probably soon wilt and then just die. So what's going on here? It's like a battle, like we said. The good guys versus the bad guys. Our plants are caught in the middle, and we're left going, what is going on here? So our trip underground reveals one very important question. Why wasn't this nematode on the right? Why wasn't it attacked like the one on the left that saved the life of the plant? This is what, science fiction movies are made out of. And what about that strand of fungus, that life-saving fungus that protected the plant by strangling this nematode? Where did it come from? Now, if you're like me, you might be thinking, this is pretty creepy stuff, Marion. I don't know if this is not really what I signed up for. But by knowing the answers to these questions, why wasn't one nematode killed off? And where did the fungus come from that killed this nematode? Knowing that answers, it'll help you solve whether or not you're going to be battling pests and diseases and constantly trying to fix problems or chasing problems or enjoying the garden that practically takes care of itself. So we're going to answer that in a bit. So let's go back up into the sunshine and look at this garden because in today's class, you're going to discover what the Amish that live in the Pennsylvania area in the like central east United States, what they've practiced for many generations. And this is a whole natural system, like I talked about earlier, like a living organism that supports life in the soil and transforms the plants growing above it. So today you're going to learn how to create that same system in your own garden. And by the end of our class, you will feel more at home in your garden. You're going to grow with more confidence. You're going to feel inspired to grow something amazing. And you're going to help others do the same. They're going to see your example and they're going to get jazzed by that energy. You're going to learn simple solutions that work that you can share with other people, learning practical tips. And as you grow, in all ways, like physically and spiritually, etc., you're going to help others grow. Okay, but here are three super important things I want you to keep in mind today. And that is number one, the wisdom of the ages. I'm going to show you techniques that aren't well known. Many gardeners haven't even tried or even heard of. Now, if you've been gardening for a while, you've got two giant green thumbs, you're going to notice that this stuff is not stuff you'd find online pretty readily. So speaking about online, I mentioned that I was a guest on the Beat podcast, and so there's Jacques on the left. We also chatted about how there's so much conflicting information out there, and it can be really confusing, frustrating, especially with AI. Sometimes you just don't know what to believe because if you go online and check in with Chat GPT, all that is it's just coming from a amalgamation of what's online, and that can be double confusing. So here is the link to this publication I created, 12 tips for spotting bad information. Okay? 12 tips for spotting bad information. And this can be life-saving, correctly, maybe even save your computer from getting a virus.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so number two is what you're going to discover works no matter where you garden. Raised beds, you got sandy soil, clay soil, hard clay. If you're in Australia, Alaska, Ontario, vegetables, flowers, herbs, fruit trees, or in containers or hanging baskets. Now I want you to pay attention to number three because it really summarizes the main reason why it's a good thing that you are all here. I can't stress healthy soil enough. And I know you've heard about it. It's almost like you're getting bombarded with this. Maybe you've dabbled to get there, but there are millions of gardeners who struggle chasing one problem after another. Um, I mean, but you're here, so that's great. You could be somewhere else. So probably at some point you've wondered, can gardening get really easier? So I think we can all agree that with gardening practices and modern day practices, compost is one of the best ways to build organic matter. And if you look at this pie chart, it says 5%. Like healthy soil only really needs to be 5 to 10% of actual organic matter. I know it seems like not much, but 50% of healthy soil is air and water. Air and water. And these are the highways through which a lot of things happen and travel underground, like we were just there a little while ago. So I have seen so many gardeners apply compost once, like in the spring or in the fall, and they assume that they're going to have healthy plants forever and ever. But that's not how it works. You really need to be mindful of what you're doing to feed your soil, to feed your plants. And this is what truly successful gardeners all have in common because it's not about buying the newest tumbler or applying bags of fancy blends, like running to the store and saying, oh, I'll just try that. They all have a sustainable way to feed their plants. In fact, soil science, and if I had my choice, I'd be a soil scientist in my next life. Science now shows that compost is the all purpose answer to everything. Well, maybe not traffic jams, but and that if you have
Yeah.
enough of it, you won't need much of anything else. And this is what I found in my life. When I started adding compost, things just started leveling out. My pH, fewer pests. You know, it poured rain here the other day, but I wasn't worried because I had really good tilth to my soil. So I want you to keep this in mind. Um, And also, speaking of keeping in mind, I just got this notification from Jill. She said, thanks, Marion. I found it reassuring to know that compost is the answer to most, maybe all of my gardening concerns. Okay, as we go through this class, keep in mind too that I'm not asking you to start building compost piles today. I just want you to begin, like I said earlier, noticing the little things in your garden, the little things. Why? Because noticing, simply going out and noticing, is something the Amish practice every day, every time they go in the garden. Okay, now you might be thinking, great, Marion, this composting stuff sounds great. It sounds like a good idea, but I just don't have time to compost, so this won't work for me. And I get it. So in a little bit, I'm going to introduce you to this publication I created, Composting Smarter, How to Make Every Minute and Inch Count. But I'm really glad you're here. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Everybody should have, and when you live in Alaska, a mug that's got snowflakes on it. I photograph snowflakes, by the way. I love them. Um, so what you're about to see, these are real challenges shared from hundreds of gardeners that I've interacted with for God, gray hair. 40 years? 40 years. And I'll go through these challenges and think about which ones apply to you, okay? So challenges like these, now I just turned 70. And in my 40 years of gardening, I can
Okay.
honestly say that weeding is easier. Weeds tend to come out more like butter, like soft butter, and I don't dread going outside anymore to do some weeding. So this is a very common comment, kind of like, "Oh my God, my greenhouse is full of aphids. The weeds are taking over. Can I put compost on your perennials?" Very good question, but there are basically two kinds of compost made from different ingredients. Now, what you liberally put around heavy feeders like broccoli or maybe not so much lettuce, but your vegetables in general is not the same what you want to distribute around your rose bushes, perennials, fruit trees, shrubs, your rhododendrons. So coming up is a bonus
Mhm.
publication I think you'll really be interested in, and that is 25 ways to use compost. This is what I call the essential guide for gardeners who want the very best for their plants. Okay. How can I grow more veggies? Well, who doesn't want to? With the cost of food going up, I mean, give me a thumbs up if you've noticed that at the grocery store. Yikes. And food
Yes.
insecurity. Yeah, gosh. So here in Kodiak, Alaska, our food basically comes in on container ships. If the container ships miss us or skip us due to weather or other conditions, guess what? You can go into the Safeway store or grocery store, and you can see shelves empty, void of produce. So it's a real thing for us. And the other thing too is by growing organically, you can grow more vegetables in less space, and you benefit from less exposure to harmful chemicals. Now, the picture of me holding the Brussels sprouts is a real thing. It's not AI
Wow.
generated. And if you love Brussels sprouts, give me a thumbs up in the chat because I think it's one of the best things on the planet. Um, Let me just kind of
Mhm.
move this over a little bit. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, Brussels sprouts are so, for me, it's it's a challenge to learn how to love them, but we've met that challenge and we love to roast them. So anyway, um, okay, compost never gets hot. We're going to cover ways to make sure your compost gets hot and stays cooking to the end. How does 6 weeks sound to get finished compost? The stuff in your tumbler is soggy and stinky and smelly and a blob. And if you've dealt with this kind of situation with your tumbler or your drum, your barrel, put a yes in the chat. I'm going to do that because I've actually tried these things and they don't always work like they're like the promises in the ads. I don't have time to make compost. We're busy. I get it. Kids go to soccer. You've got bridge. You've got, it takes you 2 hours to get from point A to point B. But remember that publication I told you about? It's coming up as a bonus. I live in an apartment, and you know what? Condo, that's actually can be a good thing, like a tiny house, because there are many ways to make compost or deal with food scraps that don't require bins and barrels. For example, I found that dig and drop composting, even in containers and small raised beds on it, like on a deck, is one of the most effective ways to deal with your coffee grounds, well, not so much your tea bags. We'll talk about that later. Banana peels. I had a gardener a student in my Compost Academy course. She lived in Montreal in a condominium. And one of her favorite things to do every day, because she liked to cook, was to go in the elevator with her container of food scraps. And she took them down to the lobby, and there was a special place outside where people could take their food scraps. And she thought that was like the best thing of her whole day. My soil is hard clay. Well, we have butter clay here in Kodiak, Alaska. It's volcanic ash, it's low pH, very, very acidic, like 4.5. We're talking bad postcard here. Um, but composting over the years brought everything into balance. And the soil became fluffier, which meant the rain didn't collect like in puddles, like you would with hard clay and turn into a brick during dry spells. It just brought good tilth. Do you need to turn your compost? Well, if you're in a hurry, you have problems with pests. I'll show you how to deal with pests in a little bit. Or have a pile that doesn't get hot. You'll love learning what turning your compost will accomplish for you. Um, Peter, oh, so the two kinds of compost, yeah, we'll hope to talk about that in a little bit. How small do you cut food scraps? We're going to talk about that too. So hang on, Gretchen. And finally, if you don't know how to start, it's like that dandelion that's a little afraid to start, like what are the neighbors going to think, etc. Um, I got to ask you, you don't know where to start. Um, has there ever been a time when you were new to something? You wanted to try something totally new. Let's say you wanted to learn how to play the harp or bake bread or learn how to ride a bike or a motorcycle. And I tell you, motion breeds clarity. One step at a time, we learn by doing. All right. If you don't have a garden, don't worry about it. This is going to be like information you can have all the time and put it to use when you do. So here's what we're going to learn today. Number one, the hidden flaw in most tumblers and bins and drums, how to fix it. Number two, how to compost without a bin. Number three, we're going to have keys, two compost keys to getting finished compost in 6 weeks. And four, a proven system to feed your plants without the guesswork. So your garden can almost take care of itself. And then I have a special gift for you at the end. So hang on. The thing is, though, this class is really not for you if you want just a picture perfect garden, even if that means using chemicals or methods that aren't really healthy, or you want instant results, you're just impatient, or you give in to problems and you just give up, or you're always chasing the latest gadget or bagged product or spray. You got to take into account those long-term impacts, or your values. So, over the next 60 minutes, we're going to explore what I call the power of compost and how to grow your most abundant garden without fads or chemicals. So, if this resonates with you, what we covered today, you're invited to go deeper inside my Compost Academy course. But before we go further, I have one ask. You see those ears? So for the next while, I want you to give your full attention, just like these deer. Hopefully, they're not in your garden. And I want you to close out those extra tabs, turn off your phone, unless you're using it for the Zoom, because what you're about to explore isn't just about compost. I'm telling you up front. It's about you, your garden, your time, your energy, and the impact you can make wherever you live on the planet. You can be an example. You can be like an ambassador. So whether you're brand new or you've been gardening for years and you've got a green thumb, okay, um, this can be a fresh start for you. So grab your favorite pen or pencil because what gets written gets remembered. This is a real pencil, by the way, and it works. Yeah. So for 8 years, I worked aboard research ships and tugboats. The closest thing to gardening that I experienced, the whole crew experience, was the lettuce that was in our salads. So you can understand why when I quit going to sea and moved to Kodiak, Alaska, where produce costs, vegetables were very expensive, even then, we're talking 1984 when I moved to Kodiak, I really wanted to grow some of my own food. It was really, really important to me because there's nothing like the taste of, well, Brussels sprouts, right? So I raised my first seedlings. I read lots of books. And when they looked healthy, I transplanted them on a sunny day, which I thought was a good thing, in my new raised beds. I planted and I watered and I screwed up because the seedlings wilted and just died. Not only did a storm come through, but it didn't take long. They were pretty weak. Now, I didn't know much about anything gardening, right? But I looked at my seedlings and I went, this has got to have something to do with the dirt, the soil. So I called the Extension Service office in Anchorage, north of us, and I said, "Hi, my name's Marion, and I live in Kodiak and I want to learn how to make compost." And I'll never forget the response. The nice lady on the other end of the phone said, "Oh, honey, that'll take 5 years." And that was what the publication and the belief was back then. And I said, 5 years? This was February. And I wanted lettuce, I wanted salads, I wanted greens and broccoli and onions by June. So I visited our local library. This is what it looks like now. This was pre-internet. And here's what caught my attention. It was a book about a little known composting method that was developed in southern India about 100 years ago. And I thought, what the heck? You know how it goes. You only lose if you don't try, right? So I collected horse manure, goat manure, alder leaves. I went to the beach and I gathered ryegrass and seaweed. And I put it all together in the corner of the yard, and I used wood pallets and our fence. So here I am in 1985 wearing insulated coveralls and turning my first compost pile. How do you like my pink scarf, right? Outside it was snowing. You can see snow on the pallet, but inside the pile was steaming. I was so excited. I just was beside myself. And I got to tell you, like it says here, turning my first compost pile was a turning point in my life. So now my plants would have great soil and I could grow my own food. It was like a hallelujah. So we started transforming what was sort of a moonscape of a yard. It had a scrappy lawn, just patches, mostly brown and weeds, into a lush garden of vegetables, flowers, and herbs. Everything you see here, from the lawn to the rhubarb patch, see the rhubarb bed at the right? Yeah, everybody needs a rhubarb bed, was grown in compost. But fast forward to today, and so now I've taught thousands of gardeners from Sydney to Seattle how to make and use compost. Not just make it, but if you're buying it, how to use it. And I've been a guest speaker in podcasts and flower and garden shows, you name it. And I've conducted workshops in our garden. So that's me on the left in the orange. And I've been writing a gardening column for 30 years, a weekly. And I've even written bulletins for the Extension Service. But remember that garden oasis, turning the scrappy lawn into this? Well, we moved across town, which meant I had to start all over. But thing is, I had a recipe. I had a method. I knew what to do. So here's what the site looked like before, when we're just starting the foundation, like when construction began. You ready for this? Here is the after. Here's what it looked like 2 years later. Everything, again, that you see here, from the hanging baskets in the upper left to the lawn, was grown with the power of compost. Now, if you're wondering about using compost to feed your lawn, like fertilizing it with it, it's not only doable, it's simple and it's practical. But hang on. We started our lawn from scratch, and we had to put down the soil and compost. We planted the seed and we fed it with compost. Now, every year we sprinkle it with compost. It looks really awful, doesn't it? Like, oh my God, I can't believe it. What are the neighbors going to think? You got to trust the process here. So here's the results. Just a few weeks later is when the grass grows through the compost, and your lawn, your grass, your turf, whatever you want to call it, will survive droughts and super cold freezing temperatures, like a lot of water and rain, all of that. But the best thing that I wanted to share with you is, this almost makes me cry because, well, you can figure it out. Kids can run and play on the grass. Grandkids, kids, you can walk around barefoot without picking up chemicals and then traipsing them into your house, onto your carpet and your floors. So I just wanted to share that with you because it's more than just making a pretty lawn. It's about helping people stay healthy. So this came in the other day from a friend of mine. She's down in Port Townsend, Washington. She said, my whole approach to gardening changed the moment I started using compost as the main way to nourish my plants. And I just want to tell you that if I can do it, so can you, because I am not a professional landscaper. I wasn't born, I didn't pop out of the womb, I mean, knowing how to compost or garden. I don't have a degree in soil science, and I didn't have the blessing of grandparents who maintained a giant vegetable garden. I didn't know anything about this till I moved to Kodiak. So let's do this. What do you think is one of the biggest complaints about composting? If it comes to mind, put it in the chat and I'll help you with this. Because after 40 years of experimenting and researching composting methods and helping people become successful composters, so here it is. My compost doesn't break down. It just sits there. And sometimes it can take years to get compost that's ready to use. So you might be super busy. Maybe you don't have time to fuss with compost problems. You just want your frickin' compost to work. Here's that hamster wheel, and you're tired of all the conflicting information. Or you're afraid the neighbors might complain, or your compost might stink. Here's the thing. Most gardeners don't realize when it comes to composting in a bin, a barrel, or a drum, it's not about the weather. It's not about where you spot your compost bin. Yes, a little bit in the sun is nice. Or even if your bin is metal or plastic, or your local waste department gave it to you. Size matters. Size matters when it comes to your compost container. And many gardeners make the mistake, I see it all the time. They think if they just buy this one spinning drum on sale on Amazon, whatever it is, that somehow it'll magically take anything you throw into it, it'll give you finished compost. And it's not the case. But I don't want you to feel bad. I'm not blaming you because if you're like most people, you're kind of falling into a trap because when first starting out with composting, maybe you just didn't know. So, what kind of trap am I talking about? So, like many of us, you might have been what I call hoodwinked. Is that a word? Hoodwinked by ads for compost tumblers and drums. It's an enormous source of frustration for gardeners who buy these things and wonder why they don't perform well. But there's so many choices and there's so many promises. Um, the pictures and the ads make it look so easy and convenient and promising. I mean, look at that. This is completely false advertising. Completely false. This is sifted stuff. All right? It's not what compost looks like, finished compost. Here's a myth exposed. Compost tumblers make compost in 2 weeks. That's a complete lie. So this composter on the left, I know it's popular. I try not to show any names. It's too small and it's too delicate, these legs, but it's too small. This is what really happens if you don't pay attention to what you put into your compost bin. This is like it's supposed to be, you put it in on the top and it's supposed to come out looking like this. This is really what it often looks like. So if that looks familiar, give me a thumbs up. Just let me know if that has happened to you or you've had a blob that just shows up in your tumbler and it's so frustrating. You got to dig it out. So the good news is there is an ideal size of container for making compost. In fact, it only feels like a pain in the you know what when the bin isn't the right size, when it's not big enough, because it's the inside of the compost that matters the most, not the outside. So if you're ready to turn those kitchen scraps and clippings and leaves and horse manure, yes, and even chicken bones and coffee grounds into the best thing you can do for your garden, here's the top secrets to successful composting. So you want your compost to reach these kinds of temperatures. So it'll break down quickly. It'll actually keep pests away and kill those weed seeds and diseases. We're talking 140 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, like 60 to 71 degrees. Now you might be thinking, Marion, um, that's like impossible. Well, I'll tell you, given the right blend of ingredients and not layering, by day two, you can have these kinds of temperatures. This is Compost Cowboy. He's smiling because if you look carefully at that thermometer, it reads about 72 degrees Celsius or about 160, 65 degrees Fahrenheit. So at this temperature, the microbes are working super hard. Keep in mind that there are microbes that can handle extreme heat. These are called thermophilic, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of kinds of microbes that are present during different stages of your composting journey. So this is what they need, though, to break down the materials and kill the weed seeds, etc. So when your bin or tumbler is big enough, your compost can reach those temperatures, even when it's cold outside. So why does the size of your bin matter so much? Because it needs to be big enough to hold that heat in the center, but not so big that it's hard to manage to turn. Too small and it won't stay hot or even warm up in the first place. So that's why the right size keeps your compost hot, working quickly, and pest free. It doesn't have to be ginormous. This is like unmanageable, right? The perfect size, and by the way, this is a picture of a bin of hot steaming compost. It started topped off here, and now it's already reduced down to that much. Um, and we cover this in the Compost Academy, but the perfect size, the ideal minimal size, is 3 by 3 by 3 to hold heat and compost quickly. Now, where does that put you as far as the barrels and drums and tumblers and bins, even homemade bins? So you probably figured out by now, most of the bins on the market are too small for compost materials to heat up properly. Most, not all. If you're going to buy a bin like this, like a standalone bin, like these standalone bins, get the biggest one you can. I know it's going to be more expensive, but you want to get the biggest one that you can. I'm not trying to bum you out because I know you're trying your best, but the industry, of course, is profit driven, but now you know better. So be a smart shopper or be a smart builder like Rita. So Rita from Sisters, Oregon, she's in the high desert. She used to try making compost in those little tumblers. But she built some bins and she was able to enrich her soil and it held moisture in the desert. For the first time, she was able to grow veggies in where she lives in Eastern Oregon. So that's why it's really, really important to be buyer beware or designer beware if you're building your own. So, how to compost without a bin? I'm going to first tell you a whale of a story. I gave you a little introduction earlier. So around Kodiak, we have about 6 species of whales. And this is a humpback whale. This is not a generated, like I put the whale into the picture behind the boat. This whale was actually jumping behind this boat, like breaching. It's called breaching. This is a humpback whale. But we have a lot of whales, particularly in the summer. I can hear them sometimes outside my greenhouse, which is cool. Sometimes they wash up on the beach, and this is a gray whale that washed up on the beach out the road system a number of years ago. And the biologists were saying, well, rather than have the bears come down and start feeding on it, which is a phenomenal sight, believe me, and it smells awful, but they decided to dig a trench, a big, big hole, and bury it. So they put this gray whale into the hole and they covered it backfilled with soil and they set it there for 5 years. And then they dug it up again. And the scientists that put the bones together, and most of the bones were cleaned off of all the flesh, all the fat. In fact, this is what the Smithsonian does when they want to clean bones, like fish bones or bird bones or whatever. I don't think there's any flesh left on a dinosaur bone. They bury it. They have special areas where they bury it, and they've got special maggots and worms that they clean it off. So this is Gordy the whale, and he welcomes thousands of visitors every year in our refuge visitor center. So um, what I want to share with you too was we had a B&B guest come, and she was really excited because she was going to have fly fishing lessons. And so she went out that day with her friends and they got lessons, and she caught a silver salmon, and she was thrilled. And she brought back this silver salmon to the B&B, and she says, "Marion, this is my first salmon I ever caught, and I want you to have it." The problem was that the salmon was not fresh. It wasn't a silver. It was sort of like darkish maroon, and it wasn't in the best of shape. And I said, "Thank you, Lori. I really appreciate it." And she actually left the next day. So what did I do? I dug a hole in my garden and I just buried the salmon in the hole and I covered it just like Gordy the whale. And the next year, almost everything was gone except like the cheekbones, the really heavy duty cheekbones on the salmon. Everything else was gone. And believe me, that's where I planted my Brussels sprouts. And they were really, really big and happy. So I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, so I'm going to share this with you a little later and a little later in the program here. How to start composting in 60 seconds, the dig and drop method. So here's 2 keys to getting finished compost in 6 weeks. There's a handful of things to make sure you get finished compost, but first of all is the bin size. There's a lot of essential steps to turning scraps into rich compost in weeks, not years. So we're going to focus on 2 of them. Number 1, this is what every successful composter does. And I'm even talking about municipal composting, um, and on a large scale. And this is the habit that turns those scraps, your food scraps, even chicken bones, into rich compost. So I just want to interrupt this bulletin briefly and share an email that I got today. But first, it's not about obsessing over the perfect CN or brown to green ratio. You can get pretty tied up into that. Or building your compost in layers, which I don't recommend, and buying another bag of compost activator. You don't need compost activator, and here's why. Leaves, for example, contain zillions of microbes on the surface of the leaves. Natural ingredients like this already are inoculated, like sourdough or yogurt, with what you need to inoculate your compost pile ingredients. So you don't need to buy compost activator. So here's an email that I received. The more and more I'm learning the huge benefit of compost and how plants reward me with beauty and are available for me to eat them and encourage my most healthy self. Yeah, I didn't even ask for this. It just popped in my inbox, and I'm just grateful to hear stuff like this. So here's the secret. Mixing the materials often and knowing when to turn changes everything. Turning saves you time because it speeds up the whole process. So what happens when you don't turn your compost regularly? If you just put the ingredients in and then just go about your life, the pile cools down, air or oxygen disappears because the microbes can only work so long without oxygen, like it stops everything. When that happens, odors develop. To put it bluntly, it starts to stink. It goes anaerobic. And then your neighbors are knocking on your door. And decomposition slows, and the pile just stalls out. And you wonder, what's the deal? And also, rats and mice and other critters stop by for dinner. Because if you're like an absentee landlord and you're not working, participating in your compost pile, you might as well just ring the dinner bell. You might as well just lay out the red carpet for pests. So it comes down to what I call the 3 T's of turning. The 3 T's of turning. Tools, what to use, timing, when to turn, teasing, how to loosen and aerate your pile while you turn. Now, these 3 T's will help create the conditions that microbes need to take that organic matter, your leaves, your banana peels, into finished compost. If you master these 3 T's of turning, you can produce that finished compost in the 6 weeks. So whether you compost in a bin or tumbler, like presently, a garbage can with holes in it, or a loose pile that's in the corner of your yard, turning keeps those microbial activities, those microbes fed with oxygen. And it keeps your compost moving forward to what I call the finish line. So tools, you need to turn the contents thoroughly. I love using a pitchfork. How do I love my pitchfork? Let me count the ways. Okay. You want to have a bin, like I said, of some sort. You need to have some sort of container. It keeps it contained, for lack of a better words. Keeps that inner core warmer. Yes, you can have a loose pile in the corner of the yard, but you still need to be an active composter and cover it up with a tarp if it rains, because compost microbes need 3 things: food, water, moisture, air. It's like us. If you have a loose pile somewhere or your compost is open to the elements, then it's going to drown them. They lose air. Or the food, it might get mushy. We'll talk about that in a bit. So you want to have a wheelbarrow, that's your best friend too, and you want a long stem compost thermometer. We're talking, like this long, like a fish was this big. No, you want a compost thermometer like 20 inches or so, and a heavy duty stem. And if you can get a ring like this, it's an accessory, but you can grab it, you could lift it out, and you can poke it back into the center of your pile. So your compost thermometer will tell you when to turn your compost. It tells you what's going on in the center of your compost. Okay. It's a lot easier than plunging your hand down in there. And I've actually made compost where it was so hot, like the 155 or so, that I took a raw egg and I cooked it in the center of the pile. So it was hard boiled. It was pretty fun. So I want you to then think about teasing as you turn, and we'll get to that. Between you and me, by the way, I'd rather turn compost upper body exercise than go to the gym. So when you're teasing, when you're turning your pile, you want to move what's on the inside to the outside realm, and the outside to the inside. I'm not talking about just those probes that sort of rotate and the little flanges on the bottom sort of turn it and you lift it out. No, I want the whole thing turned, because the bottom's going to be more dense, like even in a tumbler, it's going to be more dense. So it's going to be like folding muffin batter or soufflés, if you've ever made a soufflé. But muffin batter, you don't want to beat it too much, but you do inside to the outside, outside to the inside. And you want to shred as you go. And that's why I love using a pointy, not a blunt tipped pitchfork. It's my favorite tool, and I have a pretty tight area here that you see, and it's such a good favorite tool of mine that I actually cut off the end because it was too long to work in that area. So you can see it's pretty tight. So you want to shred as you go. Like think pulled pork or, just shredding it. Because what it does for the microbes, it increases the surface area, which gives them more food. It distributes the moisture or the water because, it'll tend to sink down. And it introduces fresh air or oxygen. Remember, you don't want it to go anaerobic. Very important. Okay, let me turn on the chat. Forgot to turn on the chat. Um, okay, Bridget, we'll see you, and I will send everybody the recording anyway. So have a great day. And where can you buy a long stem thermometer? To be honest, I got this one, and my favorite one is it's called a Rio Temp. And I can send you the link if you like. I'll put a note here about the thermometer, a link to the thermometer. It's called Rio Temp. Okay, on to compost key number 2. What's the ideal size for compost materials? And Gretchen, I think you asked this one. So the right size food is really, really helpful to turn your materials into finished compost, like readily. Because, you wouldn't feed a puppy, like a side of beef. It's way too big. Um, so we're going to help those hardworking microbes that do the work while you're sleeping break down those materials. So the ideal size is about a half an inch, like a centimeter to about an inch, like 3-ish centimeters across. And what does that look like? Well, I'm a visual person too. So you want, like corn chunks or even, like as wide as a green bean, that kind of thing. Thing is you don't want it to be too big because microbes can only feed on the outer surface. If you put a stick in your compost pile, guess what? It's only going to be able to work on that outer membrane. So you can see this little unhappy microbe right here. I can't eat it. I can't eat it. Woody stems, branches, corn cobs, broccoli stems, tomato vines, cardboard, toilet paper rolls. They're all too big. So you need to shred them down to about a 1/4 inch or so. Um, I have a shredder and it's called, I'm gonna type it in here. It's called a Works, and that's what I use for shredding my leaves when I want to, or hire a goat. So materials that are too fine can also be detrimental because it turns into a mat. I know my husband does woodworking and he's got these fine sawdust, but I have to sprinkle it in along with everything else. Otherwise, it gets smelly. It's like lawn clippings. They can also mat down and create like a smelly, impermeable sort of layer. So you want to fluff those up as you add them. Okay, bonus tips. How do you know when your compost is done? There's about 5 methods to know when your compost is done. And one that I use is when your compost is a third to a halfway down, then you know it's close to being finished. In other words, I built the compost pile all at one time, and then when it was down to about half, then I know it's almost done. And this isn't all fluffy like we saw in the ads, all right? So now it's going to sit for a little while, but that's what you want when it reduces down to about half. But like I said, there's about like about 5 or 6 ways to know when your compost is done. Now, what do you do? What do you look for when you want to buy compost? Um, and again, there's about 7 ways, 7 things you want to take with you. It's a buyer beware situation. And the first tip that I share with people, the top tip is you want to see if there's excessive wood chunks or bits or filler in there. And that's a problem, like bark or sawdust or because too much undecomposed wood can tie up nitrogen, but it can slow things down, including plant growth, if you add it to your garden. So it also reduces the value of compost. Like a friend of mine said, it's kind of like watering down a good martini. So you want to read the label carefully and look at the texture. And when I say look at the texture, if it's possible, like if you're in a big commercial composting area, you can go up to the pile and you can feel it, inspect it. Or if there's a broken bag at Home Depot or, that you can actually look at. And then also you can just buy a little bit and then test it. Test it on some flowers. The canary and the coal mine are tomatoes. They'll tell you pretty quickly if there's a problem, which is better than any sales brochure. And then what is compost tea? Is it legit? Does it really work? If you use compost tea, then, I just want to give you a little heads up. It's not a substitute for compost. Compost builds soil, compost tea supplements soil. Important difference. So if you are interested in compost tea, maybe you already make it and try not to depend on it too much. So, in other words, add compost to your soil, make it, buy it, steal it, borrow it from your neighbor, whatever, and then brew your compost tea later or as you go. Okay, a proven feed your plants without guessing, and I want to share this with you as I promised. This bonus. Uh, How to start composting in 60 seconds. Here's the link. I'm putting it in a chat right now. And I will also share these in the replay email that'll go out. So here's what we've covered: how compost makes gardening easier, more productive. Number two, the ideal size container, whether you buy a bin, barrel, or whatever, make your own bin, and why many tumblers are too small. Why compost needs to reach these higher temperatures to kill weed seeds, diseases, and break down quickly. Number four was compost key number one, the value of turning. Remember the three T's of turning, like we have in number five here: tools, timing, and teasing. And then six is compost key number two, the ideal size for compost materials. Remember, microbes don't have teeth per se. You need to help them, to nourish them. And number seven, those bonus tips. How do you know when the compost is done? What's the number one tip for buying compost? And all about compost tea. Also, how compost is the secret to tending a garden that practically takes care of itself. And I know I repeated this, but it's like people don't believe it can really happen. So we've covered a lot, but there is one left, a missing piece, I call it, that you haven't mastered yet. And that's exactly what the Compost Academy tells you to do. And the missing piece, we kind of hinted at it in the beginning. So many gardeners, and if you're included here, no judgment, try to fix problems by adding something. Let's say you heard that Epsom salts helped tomatoes, or your rhododendrons, or you're dusting sulfur around the soil for your blueberries to reduce the pH, or you add bone meal when planting bulbs. You don't need to do that. It can feel like you're fixing the problem. But what happens is you actually micromanage. You think that a little here, a little there. This is actually a short-term fix or not a fix at all. And in the process, this is the problem. You can do more harm than good. You can actually upset that natural balance that you're trying to create to help your garden thrive. And the missing piece is something that I didn't realize that we're going to see in a second here. In my early years of gardening, I was hoodwinked many ways. I didn't know better. I was always reacting to problems long after they showed up. So I learned that the Amish they don't micromanage their gardens. They think of it as a whole entity. I mean, they've been growing food for hundreds of years without using a single bottle of chemical or synthetic insecticide, pesticide, any side. And their plants look much healthier and fuller with less damage than mine. So I learned a new word. In Amish communities, this is a guiding principle they follow. And I hope I'm not going to butcher this word too much. It's a German word, Gelassenheit. And it's not easy to translate perfectly into English, but I'll give it a try. It's the closest meaning to something like yielding to the natural order, letting nature do the work. You're surrendering control and you're trusting that nature or spirit or God's design has a balance and a rhythm built into it. Your job isn't to override or kick that balance in the teeth, but to work with it or within it. Now, I'm not here to preach theology or anything, but here's why this matters for your garden. One of the best ways to show what I'm talking about is to this guiding principle is let's revisit our tale of two tomatoes, the bad guy versus the good guys. Remember that strand of fungus, this lasso? That's the good guy attacking the nematode, that tiny eel, right? This is the good guy taking out the bad guy, the nematode. It's there. But then we saw a different picture, a nematode that's punctured the root. This green is the root, and it's starting to cause damage. It's got free reign. If you read about root knot nematodes, it truly is something on a science fiction movie. So why wasn't this one attacked? Why wasn't it stopped? Because the soil was out of balance. It did not have the right kind of organic matter, like the full smorgasbord, like compost. And that's the kind that brings in the good guys. Now, you think, okay, I'm going to spray pesticides, even organic ones, or you might apply chemical fertilizers. This isn't like confession. Both of these can send the natural system out of whack and harm those organisms that protect your plants. We'll see in a second. Oh, sure, you're killing the pests, but you're also killing the ladybugs, the lacewings, the parasitic wasps, all those creatures that were already working to control those pests. I mean, doing it for free. So the Amish figured this out through one observation method, like just paying attention. And this is what science now confirms. If you build a garden that supports the whole system, then that system can manage itself. When you let nature do the managing for you as much as possible, you don't have to work so hard. You don't have to chase problems all the time. So here's where compost comes in. When you add the right compost at the right time, your soil just becomes alive with nutrients, beneficial microbes, the good guys. So that system starts to work for you. So here's a little picture, a little story. Here's a new word I'm going to share with you. It's called rhizophagy. Let's make sure I spell this right. It might be a little too long for Scrabble, but I'm going to share it with you. Rhizophagy. This is a new science, by the way. It means root eating. It's a cycle. So it's a symbiotic relationship. And what you're looking at here, this is a root tip. This is the growing end of a root tip. Let's say it's a tomato, right? And what happens is this soil is rich in microbes. It's just really rich thanks to compost. And let's say the plant is in need of phosphorus, and the plant sends a signal into the soil realm where these microbes live and essentially says, dudes, I need some phosphorus, and I need some nitrogen, and I need some zinc, whatever it is. And then these microbes, I can actually kind of move this guy in. So this microbe is invited in. And what happens now is it's like a herd out there, and the plant allows these microbes to come inside. And it's a little bit like the FedEx driver coming to your house and knocking on the door and has a package. So these microbes have on them packages of the phosphorus and the zinc. And then as they work their way up into the root hair, they are shaved off or shorn like sheep of all those packages. And then once they're stripped, then they go out through this tiny micro hair and back into the soil to collect more of what the plant needs. It's like a smorgasbord. You go along the row and you go, I want a little lettuce, I need a little this, I need a little chicken and fish and so on. But the beauty of this is when they exit out these tiny root hairs, the root hair grows. The root hair grows. So the bottom line is this natural cycle, this rhizophagy cycle that happens when you have compost enriched soil, this natural grazing cycle can supply up to 30% of the nitrogen that the plant needs. 30%. So if you don't have microbes in here, in your soil, guess what? You're already depleting the ability of your plant to take in what it needs, not what we think it needs, but the plant can just signal, however that does it, and say, this is what I need, right? The feeding. So without it, plants become stressed, like the second tomato in our tale of two tomatoes. They become more vulnerable to pests. You don't have the good guys to take out the bad guys. And over time, they weaken or even die, and we're left wondering, well, what the heck happened here? So reading all this stuff or learning about compost like this, it's little bit like learning how to drive. At first, you're like freaking out, going, whoa, but after a while, it's like smooth sailing. So now it just has become sort of natural for me, and I'm more in tune with what the plants need, like time to add more compost, and it becomes very intuitive. Now you can see why compost works so well to grow that healthy, productive garden with fewer problems, less work for you. You're creating a system that really supports itself. But you might be wondering at this point, how do you get started to make compost? And do you need to make compost in layers? How much do you need? When to turn your compost? What kind of tumbler is best? Like dissimilar metals, that's a thing. What about flies and maggots and mice and dogs? Oh my. And how do you fix a cold compost pile that has stalled out? So that's exactly why I created the Compost Academy. This is a complete system for making and using compost. So you can now build rich living soil, grow those vigorous plants, and enjoy your most abundant garden year after year with less work. So let me show you a little tour of what that involves. You get ready to use compost in 6 weeks. I developed the GOT method, GAWT, like got milk, you know. How to apply the right amount of compost. How to compost your food scraps indoors. How to apply compost that balances your soil pH naturally. We'll talk about that in a second. And how to improve. There's no such thing as perfect soil. Clay soil, sandy soil, hard clay, that allows your plants to enjoy soil that has good tilth and supports good growth, how to fix common compost problems. And the bottom line, it's so you can feel more confident about gardening, more at home in your own garden, and make gardening more relaxing, less stress, rewarding, and fun and enjoyable. So here's what we're looking at. I'll just take you through a little step by step. It's a series of very friendly videos I made, just real short ones, like little lessons. It's just me, your host, bring your own coffee. And we begin by looking at where you are, what you want for your garden, what's your goal, and how compost can help you get there. Now, whether you make your own or buy it, you're going to leave Pillar 1 with a cleaner, clearer understanding of your soil and a roadmap for getting there. Now, the most popular lesson from this particular pillar is how to use pH to manage pests and diseases, and compost is there to help you with that. Pillar 2, you discover how to find compost materials. It's like the ultimate treasure hunt. What to add and what to avoid. I think I have like 267 things you can compost. I made a spreadsheet out of that. It's pretty fun. And the most popular lesson here is the ultimate treasure hunt. How to source materials in your neighborhood, your area, or go with friends to source materials that you're going to compost. And then pillar number 3, now it's time to roll up your sleeves, make compost, and I walk you through step by step how to choose the right location. There really can be an ideal location, more of the best tools, and how to follow a very simple process for turning those everyday materials from your kitchen or from your neighborhood into rich compost that your plants are going to love. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or you just want to improve what you're already doing. And the fun one for this one, this is one of my favorite ones to teach, is tools of the trade. And I love this because, well, I'm a cook, see the little guy on the left, and I just share with you what works and what doesn't. And pillar number 4, now making compost is just half the story. In pillar 4, you learn how to tell when your compost is done, those like 6 or 7 things, that you can for indicators know when it's done. And it's important because if you apply compost that's not finished, you can actually prevent your seeds from germinating or you can kill young seedlings. So you'll learn which compost to add to fruit trees and shrubs versus your broccoli plants. And here is a whole little video lesson. Wait, there's more than one kind of compost? Yes, there is, but it's not complicated. And things don't always go as planned. That's life. And that's okay because in Pillar 5, we tackle the most common composting problems. Stinky compost, pests, weeds, it slows down, it won't heat up. And I created a multi-page, it's a one-of-a-kind complete problem solver for anyone making compost. Caroline's asking, can spruce cones be added to compost? Yes, they can. And people often ask, well, what about pine needles? Are they adding acid to my compost? Only when they're green, they have a little acidicness to them, and that's because of the waxy coating on the outside of the pine needles. If they're brown, they're more of a carbon. You don't have to worry about it. Now, can spruce cones be added? Yes, but you'll find that the microbes will only be able to work on that outer layer, those little, scales. But when you get down to the core, like a tiny piece of corn on the cob, then it'll stay like the tiny corn cob piece. So if you're going to do it, chop it, but don't worry about it if it goes through because when you put it in your garden, it'll continue to break down. Does that help, Caroline? I hope. Um, and then let's take a gander at those four bonuses. You get four bonuses when you join the Compost Academy. And I'm going to put this link in the chat. Oh, good, because a lot of people think, Caroline, that you know, pine needles are a bad thing, or spruce needles are a bad thing. So here's the four bonuses. There's four of them here that I created. No rats allowed. I live by the ocean. Norway rats are a thing here. I'll tell you what. These are 9 tricks for critter-free composting. You want to protect your pile. You don't want to share it with the neighborhood, right? Tumbler troubles. These are 12 quick fixes for faster, better compost if you are using a tumbler, right? Yeah, absolutely, Caroline. It's a brown. So here's how to turn, like, might be a soggy mess into like powerful compost. And here's that one I talked about earlier. This is the third bonus, 25 ways to use compost, the essential guide for gardeners who want the very best for their plants. This is 6 pages, a lot of creative and practical ways to use compost in your garden. And then here is, composting methods, but how to embrace like a routine, tools, techniques, and a recipe for success, all in here. And then here's what I mean by these little lessons, the little short lessons. You just grab a cup of tea in the morning, you just watch a 9-minute lesson. And there's 32 of them, and they're pretty fun. I had a blast making them. And you also have printable guides, like right here, like little, like fun little quizzes. But what's really helpful for a lot of people are the transcripts of each and every one of the lessons. So you can read along, you can take notes, you can highlight stuff you need to do or not. And those are all printable and they come with the lessons. So, my ultimate goal is to help you feel more at home in your garden and more confident and have peace of mind. I want you to have that kind of freedom. So there you go. And if you join today, I have a special fast action bonus for people that want to act now. And that's how to make compost fast. It's like bzz, 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 just like that. Now you might be wondering, what's the investment here? There's a ton of value, and we covered a lot of material today. It's like the tip of the iceberg based on my 40 years of experience. So with the Compost Academy, you can do the complete kahuna, instant lifetime access to the entire course, all the bonuses for $197. There's that QR code. But wait a minute. Stop the presses. If you don't want the study guides, you don't need them. If you don't want the live Q&A sessions that I host, if you just want the videos, there's an option for that. I have videos only access. You get the 5 pillars and the 32 little short fun friendly lessons, but you also get the lifetime access and updates. And for that, it's only 89 bucks, just like that. So which option is best for you? You can do the videos only, the full access, which is the most popular. And here's what I wanted to share with you. If you purchase, join, sign up, whatever you want to call it today, you get an autographed copy of Chicken Soup for the Gardener's Soul to the first 3 people that step forward. Autographed copy, Chicken Soup for the Gardener's Soul. So here you go, and that most popular one. And I want to share some testimonials from people who have gone through the Compost Academy. This is Hazel. She lives in BC, and you might recall a few years ago, that community set or that area set a record high temperature. And she said the plants that were growing in the compost soil did far better than everybody else. And Jeff, he lives in Australia. He was kind of a geeky science guy. Loved him. He said, I appreciated Marion's detailed and qualified um, answers to all my questions. And then Jody, she says, I highly recommend, and this would make a great gift for anyone who wants to get started or take their garden to the next level. And Peter Lee, this was really fun. He said, I bought Marion's course for my girlfriend and she's been loving it. So you can gift Compost Academy. And then Phil, he'd been trying to make compost for like 3 years and he scoured online. He couldn't find what he was looking for until he said, I joined the Compost Academy. And then here's Georgia. She lives in Eagle River, Alaska. Um, the trick was, the challenge for her was, is Georgia had had a stroke and she really depended on the printouts. And she said that it really helped her because she could go back and refer to them. So she's always said, I'll take whatever class Marion teaches. And then Maureen, she was a grandmother in the Midwest. She says, I've been composting for 30 years. I've read books, watched a gazillion YouTubes, but after I spent time with Marion in the Compost Academy, what used to take me 12 months now takes 1 month. So, and then Christine, she now lives in Virginia. She says, Marion cuts through all that misinformation, contradictions, confusion about composting and gardening. And then Lorena, she also said, not only did I learn the fundamentals of composting, I learned so much more about gardening. Now you might be wondering, is there a guarantee? Absolutely. You can join today and you're completely protected. If you don't, find it in the next 7 days to be your cup of tea, that's okay. It's 100% risk-free. Just let me know by email. And if you're not happy, then I'll just refund your money and we're still friends. So there you go, $89 if you just want the videos and full access for $197. So, I'm my goal in life is to be of service. And I'm not so much in the composting business, I'm in the transformation business. I want you to know the freedom that I've enjoyed. So I like to have a good attitude about it, like Nancy says. And then Jody also says just one of Marion's classes is worth the price of admission. So let's get some of your questions answered. Some of you had sent in a few of them ahead of time. Oh, yeah, Caroline, great. Using the needles as mulch, but yes, added browns works perfect. So what if you've never composted before? Well, remember, you know, trust the process. Here's the black and white image of my first gardening attempt. And I just had to keep trying. Motion is lotion for the physical part, and trust the process and just keep swimming. If you have questions during the course, then I'm sharing my personal email here. If you have any questions, like after this class, and not only my email, here is my mobile phone number. You can text me. So there you go, the fast action bonus along with it. And you can also have the choice of just the videos. And one question that came in was really interesting. I want to talk about tea bags here in a minute. Um, Somebody asked me, their town is struggling with proper disposal of food scraps and yard waste. Now, this is a thing because there are many communities around the world that their regulations, laws, and so on no longer allow individuals, businesses, you name it, to put any sort of organics in the landfill. Food scraps, coffee grounds, restaurant food leftovers, you name it. And so something like the Compost Academy is exactly what communities need to share information with homeowners and store owners, etc. So I want to talk about first tea bags. Somebody asked me, well, why don't you put tea bags in your compost pile anymore? Well, for one thing, is I got tired of finding tea bags that I thought were paper still showing up in the soil. And I did a lot of research, and you know what? I'm going to write this down here about food scraps too, because I created a video about this. And if you drink tea out of these triangle tea bags that are plastic, when you put boiling water over these tea bags and many paper tea bags that still are made with some plastic, you're actually consuming billions of pieces of nanoplastics. And hello, they found plastics, nanoplastics in our bloodstream, and now they found them in our brains. We don't know what the effect is at this point, but it's really important for you to see if your favorite tea that comes in a tea bag um, is one that contains plastics. And I'm going to give a list to you. Um, some of these have had plastics in the past, but are now transitioning to just paper. So the ultimate safety factor is to just um, drink bulk tea. A lot of people have changed over. So I want to buy some compost. What do I need to know? Here's one more thing that's helpful in addition to checking to see if there's a lot of like wood bits in there. Because the red flag, like I said, is if it contains what's labeled as forest products or composted wood as one of the main ingredients, don't buy it. So one thing too is if it has a strong kind of chemical smell or rotten smell, um, it is not finished. It's just not finished. So you don't want to do that. If you have questions during the course, like I said, here's my email address and my mobile phone number. So um, if you have any other questions, put them in the chat. Yes, the ones listed here are working on transitioning to um, plastic-free tea bags. So it's a changing environment, Judith. So it's best if you just um, Google it and see which tea bag companies are now transitioning to using plastic free. It's really, really important. Don't worry about the typos. I mean, we all do it, right? So, um, so thank you very much. And whether you decide to join today or not, my intention was to share truly helpful, high value information on gardening, composting, and a little bit of spirituality. So I hope I've done that for you. For those of you that choose to move forward, congratulations. You've made a wonderful investment in your happy place, in your garden, in how you spend your time. And before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a simple challenge. This is what the Amish do. This is what the Amish do. So I want you to take a walk in your garden every morning, rain or shine. Take your coffee with you if you want. Remember, snowflake teacup or coffee cup. And it's not a complicated walk. I don't want you to get all heady about this. Put your phone away. Put it in your pocket. Don't bring out your phone right now. So this little walk might be the most effective problem-solving habit you can build. It only takes a few minutes, and you're going to notice those small issues before they become big ones. And it just takes a few minutes. So if you have any other questions, you can text me, you can email me, and I'm here for you. So it's been a real pleasure spending time with you today, and I thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for being here. Okie dokies. Take good care. Blessings.